As we sit here today, the Green Bay Packers are 2-2 and have a Monday night showdown against the Las Vegas Raiders. Here to join me is going to be Dan Kotnick of Game On Wisconsin and Lombardi's Bar. Dan, how you doing today, man?
I would be doing better if Thursday night went slightly better, but I'm still doing good. Still doing all right. 2-2 is pretty good for me, I think, at this point.
Have the polls completely reversed with the Lions being good now and the Packers kind of somewhere in the middle?
Yeah, I'm extra topsy-turvy here because I live in the Detroit area. And so like the last several years, it's been I could kind of walk around with impunity, knowing like no matter what like was going on, I had something over everybody. But now I feel like I see the Jurassic Park shirt there, so I feel like I can make a bit of a nerdy movie reference. But I feel like somebody that was a part of the Empire and Star Wars after it's collapsed, and you're still loyal to them. So you're like kind of hiding everything, and you're trying to pretend that you're part of the Lions fans, but secretly deep down, like you're still part of the evil Empire.
You're
It's
just
weird.
trying to blend in, keep a low cover right now.
I'm trying to blend in till we can rise again. Yeah, till the Empire rises again.
Well, Motown certainly came to Lambeau this past week. I know a big part of the discussion is a lot of Lions fans were at the stadium. What'd you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, that's always going to happen just because Lambeau is one of the few football stadiums in America that's kind of it's a tourist destination. It's like a Fenway or a Wrigley, something like that, where, if you're kind of a football fan, even if you hate like the Red Sox or something, you still want to go to see like Fenway like one time. And so it becomes a bit of a destination for opposing fans, especially when it becomes NFC North fans, and Lions fans are feeling themselves right now. And so I think it was just a little bit extra of motivation of people wanting to go there. It definitely didn't help that it was the Packers have the two different season ticket packages, and this is the infamous among Packer fans gold package, where usually you see a more away team friendly crowd. So it was sort of a nexus of all these things building up that it didn't really help the situation. But yeah, I still think there needs to be something done about that from the Packers organization side of, if nothing else, don't make the gold package game a Thursday night game where people from Milwaukee are probably less likely to drive up for a game. So it's going to happen.
Everyone was just excited after the Dame Lillard trade, so they just didn't feel like going to the stadium, I guess.
Everyone was hungover. Yeah.
But all right, man. Well, let's start talking about the game. So you talked about the Lions fans feeling themselves. The Packers were feeling themselves through 3 weeks. It's like first season without Rodgers. We're doing okay. We're 2-1. And then Thursday night happened. Both week 3 and week 4, they started off so slow. And Matt LaFleur kind of talked about it in his presser, that he was kind of like disgusted at like the effort that was put out there in the first half. What do you think of that trend recently, that they're just starting slow? Obviously, they were able to overcome it against the Saints, but against a good Lions team, that just wasn't happening.
Yeah, it's something that Matt LaFleur offenses have at times been criticized of, is starting slow. I think, in the past, you were able to make up for it a little bit easier with a guy like Aaron Rodgers, who could pretty much generate his own sort of momentum. Jordan Love isn't able to do that. He is definitely more of a rhythm passer. He needs to be in that groove. He needs to be kind of feeling the way the offense is. And if he kind of gets out of rhythm, if the offense gets out of rhythm a little bit, we've seen that it can take them a little bit of time to kind of try to find that a little bit. I also think that if you look at these 4 games here, it's really a microcosm of everything you're going to see probably from this team throughout the year. Like, there's going to be times where it clicks right away and they take off and don't look back. There's going to be times where it starts off hot and they die off. And then, what we saw the last 2 games, where it starts off slow and either they can make the big comeback or they can get close and things happen. And I think really the biggest thing that's been hurting them so far is just penalties and young mistakes, because this is such a young team. That's what puts them behind the sticks. And once you get behind the sticks, especially in like a Matt LaFleur style offense, where it's a lot of build off the success and build that momentum and get your offense into the scripted plays and that sort of thing, that's going to hurt them a lot more than it would, maybe a more kind of like West Coast kind of chuck it around the field sort of offense. So what I think has really been the key is just what we see out of this offense, the ups, the downs. It really all just points back to the inexperience and youth of so much of this team, whether it's the quarterback, the offensive line, the wide receiving core, the tight ends, like everybody. It's all across the board. Everything that we're seeing, it's all mental mistake stuff that you would expect out of a young kind of group. I think I heard somebody relate like this team, it feels more like a college all-star sort of team right now, where it's like you've got a lot of this great talent that hasn't played together ever. Now you're throwing them into this mix and they're all trying to figure out how do we actually work together? And so that's going to be a lot of what we see. And so with that, you get the highs and the lows, but I think it all goes back to keeping this team on track, focused. You don't make the mistakes and they'll figure it out.
Dan, you mentioned getting thrown off rhythm, and I think a big part of that, especially when we look at the last few years with Matt LaFleur, is they like to run the ball. They like to establish the running game with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, and that just wasn't there against Detroit. And once you fall behind early, it's even harder to capture that. You have a young quarterback, as you mentioned, like he needs to get in rhythm himself to be able to have success in games. Are you discouraged by what you've seen by the running game so far? You talk about college all-stars and star players. I've considered Aaron Jones among the elite running backs over these last 5 years. So to see him take a step back is discouraging. But A.J. Dillon was also a guy that was highly touted. I know fantasy players last year were jumping for the chance to grab him like the third round, but we haven't just seen any of that over the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, AJ Dillon has been the shine has sort of worn off AJ Dillon, I think, around Packer fans, especially here early on in the season, just because we really haven't seen a step forward from him. We've seen flashes when he's playing alongside Aaron Jones, but we always kind of expected there to be a time where AJ Dillon would take over and be sort of like I guess if you want to say this, like a Derrick Henry light, like a guy that you could sit back there and just he'll get 4 or 5 yards.
If I can interject, I would just say like it was surprising when you guys even signed Aaron Jones to that extension.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's fair. Well, I think a lot of Packer fans, if you go back and ask them when that happened, and I remember when that news broke because I went live on YouTube with some friends from our channel there, and we were all kind of surprised because we were going into it, especially when they drafted AJ Dillon that year. That was coming into AJ Dillon's second season. We're like, okay, it's going to be Jamal Williams and AJ Dillon. They're the two cheap guys. You're going to make do with that, and then they signed Aaron Jones, and we're like, wow, that was kind of a big surprise. You don't really see that from this organization. I mean, the Aaron Jones, it's paid off so far. Like he has done what you want him to do. Like you said, he's been at least top 10. You could argue maybe top 5 running backs out of the last few years. This year, he was great in that Chicago game. The hammy bites him there on that last touchdown pass. We don't see him the next 2 weeks. And then this past week on Thursday, everyone's excited that he's going to be playing, but Matt LaFleur does sort of this thing that Matt LaFleur just always seems to do where he forgets that Aaron Jones exists or is afraid to get him hurt. There's been so many times where, as a Packer fan, it gets so frustrating where one of the things kind of happens with the running backs, either it's A.J. Dillon or Aaron Jones, and Matt LaFleur becomes scared to use them. This offense becomes so shaky. They can't get anything going. And it just felt like that was another game this week where he was afraid to really pull the full Aaron Jones out there, let him just do what happens. You have 10, 11 days before your next game. Let him rest up afterwards, but get this one. This is the big one. Yeah, it's been frustrating to see because this team, it's always been built when it was Matt LaFleur. The offense is designed to be built around running the ball a lot and doing it well, and then killing you on the play action. That's what it's designed to do. And you can see the way that they've used a lot of the play action stuff with Jordan Love so far. That's what they're doing. Like any of the big trick plays and stuff that you've seen, it's all been based out of, run formations, the flea flicker, the toss back. It's all been based off of that kind of stuff. That's what they really want to build this team around. And I go back to this too. I think with the way that we've seen A.J. Dillon sort of start off this year, I think now Packer fans kind of understand a little bit more why the reports came out that they were one of the teams that was making a push to get Jonathan Taylor from Indianapolis. because I think they sort of understand that this running back group is in a precarious situation, because without a healthy Aaron Jones, this running back group becomes one of the real kind of dead spots on this team, and you need it to be good if you're going to run the offense Matt wants to run.
I think something that was very evident in that game, one of the interceptions came on play action. The fact that you guys didn't have an established running game at that point, I think the Lions defenders were able to just sit back, and that's what aided in them picking off Jordan Love on that particular moment. Now, let's talk about Jordan Love a little bit. So Jordan Love, we've talked about the ups, we've talked about the downs. I look at last year's version of Aaron Rodgers, and I don't think that it's a reasonable expectation to ask Jordan Love to be Aaron Rodgers in his prime. But when I look at 2022 Aaron Rodgers versus 2023 Jordan Love, do you think that Jordan Love to this point has been an improvement over 2022 Rodgers? Because 2022 Rodgers, I think this stat exists. He didn't throw for over 300 yards in a single game last year.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll say, and this might come off as some Aaron Rodgers hate. I don't intend it to be that way. But when I was watching week 9 last year, Packers Lions in Detroit, I made the comments on Twitter. It was like, this was like after maybe like a second or third interception that Aaron Rodgers had thrown or something. And I said, Jordan Love could do this same exact stuff right here that Aaron Rodgers is doing for about like 25% of the cap hit. And so I guess if I want to be kind of coy, I'll say that that's what he's doing. He's 2022 Aaron Rodgers for a lot less money. But seriously, when you look at what he's doing, if we want to look at his play overall, I like how he is operating the offense. And I like how, if you go back and watch his film, outside of this past week in Detroit, where he was literally under fire about 50% of the time, there never seems to be a time where he is panicking. He doesn't seem to be in over his head a lot of times. And his biggest thing has been inaccuracy with some of his balls. But anytime that a play is sort of off the mark, misses a throw, he's at least making usually the right throw. You know what I mean? He always seems to be making the right anticipation throw. He knows where his guys are usually supposed to be. He has the feeling of the pocket around him. And so I think when you look at it as a projection moving forward, that has to give you a lot of hope for what he could become if he can figure out some of those mechanical things of being a little bit more accurate, getting in more of a rhythm with how his wide receivers like to play. You could see that big on that last interception that he had in the fourth quarter, where he looks like he's going to scramble and Romeo Doubs is waiting for him wide open. He kind of does a little double pump there. Romeo thinks he's going to scramble, so he starts playing scramble drill. Jordan tries to throw it to where he was, and it's an interception, because these guys, they're not on the same wavelength yet of, when you're in this situation, how do you like to play? But you can see that the thought mechanic is right. He is thinking it through. He's not throwing a panic ball. There's been a lot to really enjoy with what you see out of Jordan Love. And you mentioned kind of comparing it to the 2022 Aaron Rodgers season. I think the biggest thing outside of just, like a 300-yard game or a 3-touchdown game, the thing that's been really different about this year versus last year is the middle of the field opens wide up now. They haven't connected really much on it yet, but there have been so many more shots down the middle of the seam, the middle of the field. Aaron would never throw down the middle of the field anymore. He was so, I don't want to say afraid, but he was so anti throwing anything that could possibly be an intercepted ball that the middle of the field was almost negated. And teams could game plan around that. And once he got to a point where he was he was hurt last year, and you can't throw that deep ball down the sidelines, you can't get it over to the corners anymore. That's when things start to become a bit of a problem. Jordan Love, you can see this offense just opens wide up with him. And there may be accuracy issues, there may be connection issues, but you can tell that this offense just seems to it gets a lot more fun with Jordan Love. That's what I'll say.
I think one of the narratives that constantly followed around the Packers of the last couple of years, particularly when Aaron Rodgers was there, is he has no help. Those young wide receivers are trash. They're awful. So it's fun to see that a guy like Romeo Doubs is having success this year. Christian Watson, I know he's been banged up, got to play Thursday night. How do you think that Jordan Love has been able to use his younger wide receivers? Even Musgrave, I know he went down with a concussion in this last game, but even Musgrave, the tight end, I think has been a solid addition to the team. How do you think Jordan Love has been able to utilize his targets? And are you excited about those targets now as we kind of push towards this youth movement with the Packers?
Yeah, I think one name you definitely have to include in there is Jayden Reed, the wide receiver out of Michigan State. You watch him, he's not the fastest guy on the field, but he is so accelerated in terms of the way he can break off of the ball, the way he runs his routes. He has been one of the real kind of exciting surprises here early on in the season. For me, really what it is, this is something that Aaron Rodgers would never really kind of want to be a part of. Educating a whole new crop of targets and wide receivers. He wanted his Allen Lazard. He wanted his Randall Cobb. He wanted Mercedes Lewis, the guys that knew how he operated, and he didn't have to get onto the same page. He didn't have to, pull them along and wait for them to get there. He's done a great job of figuring out where guys sort of fit on this offense in certain situations. You can tell it's almost become like a guarantee now. When they get inside 15 yards or so, there's going to be one play where he runs a fade into the corner to Romeo Doubs and throws up to Romeo and says, "Go get it, big boy." That's become a staple here so far. You can tell that trust is developing there. Like you mentioned Musgrave. He's been the guy that's attacking that seam, and there's at least one scripted play in there for him where they want to find that look. And then you mentioned Jayden Reed. He's just been a guy that you kind of throw into anywhere, especially out of the slot. He's been a really great addition. Jordan is going to have to get on to the same page with all of them still. It's going to take a lot of time to get to a level Aaron Rodgers-esque. Like, you're never going to be up to that level, but to get at least on the same page with these guys where they understand you a little bit more and it becomes a little bit more second nature. The thing, though, that I'll just kind of go back to is I'm more just excited to see a group of young wide receivers and pass catchers who don't have to kind of play on eggshells each week about what's going to go wrong. And I go back again to that interception that Jordan had at the end of the game where he was looking for Romeo Doubs, and Romeo Doubs was visually upset at what happened. God help you. If you were Romeo and you did that to Aaron Rodgers on the field and you showed him up after an interception like that, buddy, you might as well be on the practice squad at this point. It just is nice to see an offense that's not afraid to make mistakes and not afraid to be engaging with each other of like, no, we got to do it this way. We got to do it this way. Figure it out like adults. You know what I mean? It just the offense just feels so much more fun and kind of open. And it might not be as potent, but it's more fun to watch.
Now, towards the tail end of last year, Christian Watson was becoming the go-to target for Aaron Rodgers. And as I mentioned, he's battling back from injury to start the season. In that time, Doubs seemed to develop a chemistry with Love. Do you think that we'll see more balance moving forward? Do you think Watson will reestablish himself as the preferred wide receiver one, or do you think that Doubs is going to retain that title? And you even mentioned Reed jumping in there as well. Yeah. Like, how do you think like the pecking order is going to be? I know there's going to be a lot of fantasy football players that are interested in that question.
Yeah, that's a hard one to tell because it was so much easier when it was Aaron Rodgers, because he would almost pretty much come out and coordinate, one of the guys as like, this is like, I bless you. Like you are my guy for the year. I think when Christian Watson is 100% healthy, this offense is going to open up to him a lot more because just he has that huge breakaway speed. I personally think that Romeo Doubs will still be, I would call him like 1A, 1B, but kind of like different sides of the coin, basically. Like Christian Watson is going to get a lot of looks because they're going to script a lot of things to him to break away down the field, to break away an open field, to give him an opportunity to use his speed. And Romeo so far has shown that if you kind of need him to make the catch, if you need to get a first down, to get a touchdown, he's kind of a guy that's always going to be there. He's going to be the reliable, sure thing. So I think it's kind of a 1A, 1B, but it's because they both bring sort of a different version of that wide receiving option to what this offense could be.
Now, a lot of Packers fans are saying it is time to fire Joe Barry. Back-to-back games of allowing 200 plus rushing yards. I'm looking at this game Monday night, and you're welcoming Josh Jacobs, one of the league's best running backs, into town. Is it just a misuse of personnel, or is the personnel just not there?
A little column A, a little column B. There was some good looks in that Atlanta game, which I give him a little bit more credit in that Atlanta game because that's one of the better running teams in the league. Like that's what they're supposed to do. I think Bijan Robinson will look back on it, and that'll be kind of a game like, hey, do you remember when young rookie Bijan Robinson ran for 200 yards? And it's like, yeah, that's what he does every week now. But yeah, I think it's a combination of Joe Barry still inexplicably kind of putting his guys in bad positions at times, running very uncommon situational football. Like when the Lions were up by 10 and were running the ball, and you're still playing like 5-7 yard off coverage ball, like too deep, like there just seemed to be like this disconnect. But then at times still there's been a lot of poor execution from players, poor tackling, poor form. That goes back again, like off the defensive line for the Packers is built to rush the passer. The whole defense is basically to stop the passing attack. So you're going to have naturally a slump in the run defense. It shouldn't be this bad, though, with the players that they have. I think it's about like 70% Joe Barry, 30% the players need to step up and make the plays outside of what the scheme is. Like Jair Alexander mentioned last year, it came out about that he was kind of criticizing what the scheme was, but he came back and said, like, it really doesn't, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what the scheme is. We have to go and execute as players. And there's still a lot of plays that get missed because of either inexperience or lack of talent. If you want to look at maybe like a Darnell Savage or the safety group as a whole, the defensive line group has gotten a lot younger. They're still trying to develop. Without Devondre Campbell, the linebacker group, you're relying more on a second-year Quay Walker. Yeah, they're not going to fire Joe Barry. I wouldn't be surprised. I'd help him go pack if that was the decision that made. They're not going to fire him in season, I don't think. But I think he is a major, major issue in why this defense doesn't operate at the high level it probably could every week.
Overall, Matt LaFleur, I mentioned this was going to be a big season for him, his first season without Aaron Rodgers, to really get a look at what he does as a coach. We talked about Jordan Love, and I think you and I would both agree probably there's been some improvement from what we saw in the previous games that Jordan Love started the last couple years, the preseason games, the little bit that we got to see of Jordan Love to now. There's some obvious signs of progression there, which I think you would accredit to Matt LaFleur. But through the 4 weeks that we had, the 4 weeks of sample size, do you think that Matt LaFleur is still within that upper echelon of coaches around the league?
I guess that kind of depends on how you qualify your top coaches. But I'll go back and say real quick, I want to make sure this is noted too. You mentioned that he was a huge part of the progression we saw in Jordan Love. It should be noted that a lot of that too a lot of that credit has to be given to Aaron Rodgers as well. Because it's kind of trippy to watch if you're kind of a film guy and you watch how he handles his play action, Jordan Love does, his mechanics, the way he sort of handles himself on the field, it's very Aaron Rodgers-esque. And there's a lot that you can see is like, he learned that from Aaron. Like he learned how to do that from Aaron. There's a lot there. So I think, definitely as much as I kind of am maybe ragging on 12 a little bit, a lot of the credit for that progression and what we saw to Jordan Love goes to Aaron Rodgers too.
But I guess I give credit to LaFleur for sticking with him because obviously LaFleur comes from that Shanahan coaching family, right? With McVay, Shanahan, McDaniel we're seeing now, where those coaches seem, so far McDaniel has been good about this, but quick to move off quarterbacks if they don't live up to their standard, because they believe in their offense, those guys. They all believe their offense will kick ass so long as the quarterback does exactly what I tell them to do. That was a little bit of a point of friction between LaFleur and Rodgers. McVay, we saw what that did with him and Jared Goff. He said, I need to get Stafford in here. That's the only way I'm winning a Super Bowl. Garoppolo and Shanahan, that drama. And then we saw they just were quick to trade off Trey Lance without giving him proper playing time, similar to a Jordan Love situation. So I do think that it is a reflection on not only LaFleur, but also Gutekunst to be able to stick with a guy when they haven't really seen much. I guess that's why I would kind of give to his
Okay,
credit.
yeah,
So let's rank him against his contemporaries. Do you think that he's still firmly behind those guys in that Shanahan tree? Is he the fourth Beatle, I guess? Is he
yeah,
Ringo?
he might be Ringo. That's why I kind of like made that clarification of like how do you do it? Because if you're looking at the way that they run offenses, they're all really good. Like if you look at the Beatles as all four of them individually, they are all very talented. They're all great musicians. But who do you remember as the great Beatles? It's the ones that are winning Super Bowls, the ones that are going to Super Bowls, the ones that don't have teams that go down 23-7 at home on Thursday night. That's I think what sort of maybe makes Matt LaFleur that Ringo of the I'm using that moving on now. That puts him sort of in that kind of just maybe tier like right below is because there's just been so much inconsistency in how his teams get up for big games, how they do coming out of bye weeks, how they do when they're faced with adversity in the middle of games at times when the offensive game plan gets kind of shaken up, how do they react mid-game? That's I think what sort of separates him from some of these other great coaches in the league right now is we haven't really seen him do that and we haven't seen him do it consistently. What's going on in like Miami and stuff, like that's what all of these offenses are supposed to be doing at like the highest level. Matt just hasn't been able to figure out a way to make it click and get there. And Mike McDaniels, I know he has Tyreek Hill, which makes things a hell of a lot easier, but he made it click like that. Like it was instantaneous. Like we are one of the best offenses. And until we kind of see any cracks, like I think he's still above where Matt is. It's just really that is Matt LaFleur a really, really, really good offensive coordinator, or is he a kind of second tier head coach? Which one
Yeah.
is he?
What's the
You know,
Packers' identity, would you say? Because
that's
long
that's a
gone are the
great
days
question.
of, yeah, long gone are the days of gritty northern football,
Mm-hmm.
run it, cloud of dust, whatever. This is more of a finesse team for like a non-finesse environment. And I think that sometimes works to their detriment. We saw it every time they played the Niners in the playoffs, right? Now we're kind of like seeing it too against this Lions team. This Lions team kind of reminds me of some of those 49ers teams from the past few years. So I think that right now they're in a little bit of an identity crisis. Want to talk about that a little?
I think they have an identity. I think it's just not a very strong one. I think their identity, it's right here on my shirt, all gas, no effing brakes. Like that's sort of supposed to be this
Wow.
identity
Wow. Stealing
of
that from the Niners,
that.
huh? Stealing that from the
It's
Robert
all
Saleh defenses.
it's all the Shanahan, it's all the quotes, the phrases, it all comes down. Yeah. But
Steal our
like
schemes, steal our
it's
phrases.
but it's supposed to be this offense, kind of like what the Dolphins looked like in that extrapolate that with a 70-20 win. But you get up big on offense. The offense comes out early, puts up 14-17 on you in the first half. The defense gives up 3 points and can like pin their ears back in the second half and just blow you away.
Yeah.
They're a very complementary sort of team. And so that's why we run into these issues a lot where when the offense can't stay on the field, get into a rhythm, put points up on the board, the defense gets put into bad situations where they're not really built to just be out there for 12 play drives, handling run and pass. They're built to say, you're down by 14 points, you need to throw the ball, and we know that, and we're going to come for you. And so that's when you get into problems. And you mentioned right there, like those 49ers teams that they run into a buzzsaw, these Lions teams that they've never been able to really figure out. What do they do well? They run the heck out of the ball. And then their defenses are really good about getting into your face and throwing you out of your rhythm. It's the perfect poison pill for beating this kind of Packers team, which is, yeah, it's very finesse, which is very different than what we've seen out of a lot of other Packer teams in the past. But I think you also have to look at that when you look at those teams in the past. It was all Mike McCarthy, who is very traditional, West Coast offense, throw the ball around, let your running back get you 3 yards in a cloud of dust when you need it, sort of thing. This is a very different style, and I don't think they've really been able to figure out how to make it click on both sides yet.
Now, let's look ahead to the Monday night game. The Raiders, Jimmy Garoppolo, maybe. Are you scared that Jimmy Garoppolo is going to pass concussion protocol and beat you guys again for the third time in his career? Was it fourth time, actually? I don't know, because there was a regular season, the 2 playoffs, right? 3-0?
It might be 3-0, yeah.
4-0. No, because they played one more time. No, there was one. There was one you guys got us. I remember, actually. It was comeback mode. Jimmy Garoppolo, and then Aaron Rodgers with 40 seconds left.
The Monday night, the Monday night game.
You got us once. So 4-1, okay. I want to say, over that 4-year stretch.
And he didn't play in that. Was that the one Thursday night game too, where it was like the COVID year and everybody, like they almost didn't play the game?
Oh yeah, there is that one. I guess I wiped that from my memory because
I wouldn't even count that one.
They were like on their like 5th wide receiver. Not to mention
they should have just
Bosa was out since week 2, and then there was everything was just a mess.
Yeah.
But anyway, Raiders, Jimmy Garoppolo. I mentioned Josh Jacobs versus this rushing defense. This rushing defense that allowed 139 yards after contact against David Montgomery. Can you stop them? What do you think? The Raiders are hurting too. Second primetime game for them in the last 3 weeks.
This is going to be a really big test for Matt because you're coming off of an ass kicking on Thursday night, but you also get this sort of mini bye week, which is always sort of tenuous with how his teams play. You're going on the road to Vegas, which is in the West Coast time zone, which they never do well doing that. And then, I don't know, playing in Vegas always scares me because I project my insecurities and vices on the players. And so I'm worried that everybody's going to be out at Circa Sportsbook until 2 a.m. the night before. But
well, let's hope not, because then you might have a Jameson Williams. Good thing that the NFL just changed the betting rules. So 2-game suspension now for a first-time offense.
So catch him after the Monday night game and it'll be all good. But yeah, it's the Josh Jacobs things worries me. The thing that kind of gives me a little solace is that outside of Devontae Adams, I don't really see a lot else that's scary with this team. Their offensive line isn't as good as some of the last 2 that we've seen, or really last 2. It's one of the weaker ones, I feel like. And then outside of Max Crosby, I feel like this defense, we can play against this defense a lot easier. Hopefully that means they can get into that complementary style of football and eliminate a little bit of that Josh Jacobs run. I think also any team that's coached by Josh McDaniels won't scare me too much until I get into the game and see if it's going to be like that Josh McDaniels team or that Josh McDaniels team.
Just don't have him do math. Don't have him do math towards the end of the game when you know you need 8 points. You decide, oh, you know what? Let's kick the field goal. We'll get the ball back. Meanwhile, they're playing like 6 yards off the ball.
3 field goals in 2 minutes. It can work.
We'll chip into this 8-point lead 3 points at a time over the next 2 minutes. Like, come on.
Cover the spread. I feel like this is a good opportunity for a bounce back game when you look at the opponent. The things that scare me, though, is the long layoff, which they've never handled well, the travel, all of that. This is the first time that a Jordan Love team is going to run into that situation. So we'll see how this team kind of operates. And I guess too, when you think about it, if we're talking about the Packers teams don't travel well to the West Coast, they don't do this well off of breaks. This is a young team. There's a lot of players on this team that aren't part of those teams. And so have they changed that? Is this a new culture? Are they going to be able to handle that better? Yeah, I am worried about Josh Jacobs. I think, though, that the Raiders defense is going to give this Packers team a lot of opportunities on offense to get back right themselves. Hopefully that means this defense is going to be able to do what they do best, and that's get after the quarterback and cause some turnovers.
All right, guys. Well, Daniel Kotnick from Game On Wisconsin, Lombardi's Bar, thank you so much for joining us, man. Go ahead and check out all of Daniel's content. We'll have the links below in our YouTube description, podcast description, wherever you're listening to this. From Juju, stay safe, happy, and healthy, and we'll see you next time.